We hope you enjoyed this production from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Akron. If you would like more information about Unitarian Universalism or our community, please visit us at uuakron.org. The following recording is from the March 22, 2015 service titled, A Long Time Coming, Celebrating Marriage Equality, featuring speakers Carol Dobbins, Linda Hale, Katie Fry, Sue Lacy, and Reverend Tim Temerson. In just a few short months, marriage equality will at long last be the law of the land, including here in Ohio. Join us as we celebrate this long overdue victory for love and commitment, justice, and civil rights. Two recently married couples from our congregation will share their stories and the impact marriage equality has had on their lives.
I just want everyone in this room to know that if in your life, either in the past or in the present, that you find yourself being hurt, scorned, mocked for who you are or who you love, I just want you to know that whatever they're saying, it ain't true. And I also want you to know that if you need a community, if you're looking for a place where you can be who you are and where who you are will be celebrated with great, great joy, you found it. So as promised, we've got two wonderful newly married couples here joining us who are going to share their stories. First, we'll hear from Linda and Carol, and then Katie and Sue. And I've been looking forward to this for a long, long time, so take it away.
Well, wonder of wonders. I'm married for the first time in my life. I have found a calmness and a gentleness I never felt during the first 25 years. Being up here is hard for me. Had I realized how hard, I would have declined. You know, right up front. Anyway, this opened me up to old memories, to question the damage that may occur to the psyche of a person who lived their life living a lie. Living in the Bible Belt, pretending to be like others, hiding my feelings, hiding from family, hiding who you are, seeing what happens when you are recognized as different. People were beaten at Stonewall for the first time when lesbians and gays stood up to New York City police, who were targeting them, arresting them for wanting to be together, for loving in a different way. The AIDS epidemic, which brought out such horrid hatred and disgrace at a time when the president, our president at the time, let the disease multiply out of control because we deserved to die. He did not want to be seen as caring for or concessions to the gays. And the loss of so many others. Matthew Shepard, Ed Ayers, who was a member of this church, who died because they were seen as who they were, then beaten and left to die. I could go on about the atrocities and how it hurts the heart and mind, but in the end, they resolved my faith and in self and others. The real challenge for me was to find myself and love myself beyond the old family and social teachings. Did I deserve to be rejected, unloved? Am I going to spend eternity in hell? Would I allow the social and religious beliefs of others keep me from being myself? Of course not, because love is a miracle, because Carol is a miracle, because was it luck that I found the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, the person who loves me and I love? Being able to marry has for me turned my whole world upside down. How I now have federal protections for myself and Carol. I'm able to sleep at night because I know she will be cared for when I die, and possibly visit me if I become ill. Being able to be legally married is a miracle. I'm so glad a group of UUs in Boston, Massachusetts could envision this future for us and began that story. Yet being able to marry feels unexpected to me. Maybe I'm hanging on to someone else's wishes or beliefs. I don't know. Even so, I invite you to continue to join us. Join HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, or Lambda, a legal group that helps support issues for gays and lesbians and gender changes. Speak out as your heart leads you. Those of you who love us, those of you that are allies, those of you who question and wonder about all these changes, my greatest wish is, as the Supreme Court hears arguments on April the 28th to legalize marriage in Ohio and other Midwest states, is for young lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and different gendered to hear and know that they can be married, knowing that freedom may help them in this world to survive the dark places that growing up can bring. May we see less rejection of them and less suicides. And of course, wonders of wonders, I'm married for the first time in my life. I'm so glad.
Linda and I were having lunch one day last week with a couple of friends, and we were talking about this very service. One of them casually asked me, well, what are you going to say? And I asked, well, what do you want to hear? And her response kind of caught me off guard. Tell them that our lives are just as boring and mundane as theirs is. Funny at first, but poignant. A marriage is a celebration of love, a contract, a commitment, promises, a legally binding agreement, a declaration of the contract with the government, protection of property, a partnership, and the establishment of a family. Ours is loving, always interesting, sometimes challenging, sometimes cumbersome. It's rich and comforting and feels like safety. Oh, and did I say it was a declaration of love? Being married gives couples over 15,000 protections, rights, and responsibilities under federal and state laws. In Ohio, as of now, those state protections don't extend to any gay or lesbian couples. The only options we have are to be obsessively diligent about our legal, property, and health documents. We cannot assume any protections or rights under state law. In the 90s, Linda and I chose to defy the legal restrictions of that constitutional amendment that denied the rights of any partnership to exist in Ohio. The effect of that constitutional amendment has been watered down by some of the major universities in our state and some large corporations, but it still restricts our rights. We diligently and defiantly changed our wills, powers of attorney, health powers of attorney, our deeds, our insurances, all of our finances, and on and on. But our partnership was not validated by federal law until we married. That day in Jamestown, New York was magical. We invited our closest family and a couple of very good friends to join us. In that little UU church up on the hill, at 1 p.m., we lit candles and we shared our promises of love and commitment. This ceremony was so filled with love, I can still feel it. Remembering that day fills me so deeply, and it also was an act of defiance. We were finally able to be married. I just feel so heavy-hearted that our marriage license wasn't issued in our home state. When I think of our marriage, I think of how much the two of us have grown and changed over the last 26 years. The fact that we have such a strong commitment to be together wouldn't change even if we couldn't be married. But being married has huge social meaning. And sharing that meaning with our church community was a very, very important thing for us. That's why we invited the members of our church to come to our reception. We also invited our families. 2 of my sisters and their families came. Most of my cousins came up from Cedarville. Some of them finding out that I was gay at the same time that I extended the invitation. That didn't seem to matter to my very loving and very conservative family. Having people around us at the wedding reception who shared their love and support for us was life-changing for me. I felt so much joy that I probably sang and smiled and laughed for days. Still do when I think about it. Many of you shared that moment with us and those feelings. And for that, we are eternally and enormously grateful. It was an experience I truly never expected to have in my lifetime. That rite of passage that most young people, especially young girls, dream about. And they never question their right to dream it. I never allowed myself to have that dream, even when I first found out that it might be possible. I still ridiculed it. When society tells me over and over that I'm somehow not worthy of participating fully in the most common of social rights, I began to resent even the possibility of ever having it. Struggling with the competing feelings of social unworthiness and my strong will of self-acceptance, it's difficult to believe that what the government and society were telling us, all of us, was correct. I really believed that being married was unimportant, irrelevant, and undesirable. The only way to justify our personal worth and the sanctity of our relationship is to believe that being married must not be important. But being married is important, and it does matter. My desire and ability to love and legally commit to Linda does matter. Not just for financial reasons, although that's important. It matters that Linda is accepted and protected as an important and complete part of who I am in every way that matters. I want the state to recognize our love and commitment and to protect us as much as it does everyone else. Marriage and all its rights and responsibilities is a cornerstone of legal, cultural, religious, and governmental norms. To deny its protection to me and the woman I love is to say that our love, our inherent worth, and right to participate fully in this society are not legitimate. I reject that notion and will continue to defy it. To quote Evan Wolfson, the founder and president of Freedom to Marry, who spoke about the upcoming decision of the Supreme Court on marriage equality, every day of delay is a day of injury, indignity, and injustice. To us and to many, many other folk who are partially disenfranchised citizens of this state because of the gender of the person we love. Thank you.
It's hard to go after those two beautiful, right, testimonials, but we will. And you've heard that saying, you don't know what you don't know. Well, in my case, I did know, since I had previously been married to a man. So I was entering new territory when I fell in love with a woman. I knew what I did not have anymore. I was no longer normal. I no longer had societal acceptance. When I told one of my friends seated over here, after 13 years of marriage, she became weak-kneed. She's like, really? So I lived in a society where I felt normal. But when I started to be in a relationship with Sue, I realized, well, I'm no longer normal anymore. I felt like an outcast, like someone who had to hide out, someone with no rights, having to hide the fact that I loved a woman instead of a man. Well, Sue and I have been in a committed, loving relationship for over 23 years now. We've raised 3 children. We would have loved to have married over 20 years ago, but that was not an option. Had we done that at the time, Sue would have become a step-parent to our children. Very socially acceptable these days. But that didn't happen. So we felt uncomfortable in public settings. We couldn't act like a couple, which I was so accustomed to doing. Simple little things like walking down the street, holding hands. You could no longer do that anymore. I had to shift my whole brain. Going to school open houses. Sue always wanted to be very involved with the kids, and of course, who wouldn't love Sue? I mean, they loved her at home, but they had to pretend when they were out and about, and it was really shifted their brains. Very difficult. School open houses, music events at the schools, sporting events at the schools. We would go together. It was extremely awkward. We didn't know what to say to people. Previous acquaintances started shying away from me. They didn't really know how to react. They really didn't know how to say. People started asking us if we were sisters because they could sense our closeness, but they never had any frame of reference that we could be, partners. It was always like, you guys must be sisters, right? I mean, we're both short. We had brown hair at the time.
That changed. Then I was her mother.
I felt the worst for our children. Since Sue wasn't an accepted step-parent, they felt they had to hide out from their school friends, not trying to acknowledge Sue's existence or always pretending that she was an aunt when they came over to visit, like, well, this is my aunt. They didn't want to bring their friends to the house. Now, had we been able to marry, and socially acceptably, this would never have happened, would not have been an issue. And I have to say that our children were wounded by this culture's non-acceptance of our love and commitment. Fortunately for them, to a great degree, although I can't say completely, they have overcome that pain. This church was especially helpful for our youngest daughter, Deanna, many of you may know. Here at UUCA, she found friends. That she was a big part of the youth group, and she found a refuge at this church from the conservative culture at her public school. And we have come full circle. I mean, during our wedding ceremony, our children participated fully in the service. They each wrote their own individual piece describing, the journey that we've all been through in this really mucky, kind of land that we've lived in. And everyone laughed and everyone cried. Someone during our service actually yelled out, "Somebody get a mop." People were really crying because, most of the people at the service had been with us for that whole journey and longer, and, they really felt for us. So fortunately for us and, society, we believe, social norms have transformed in the last 23 years. We were able to get married last December 27th with 80 of our closest friends and relatives in Pittsburgh, which unfortunately was not Ohio, but I am from Pittsburgh, so that actually expedited some of my relatives coming that might not have traveled to Ohio, perhaps. But I have to say that, despite being married and having rights, we still hide out sometimes. And we can, because our minority status is not as visible as the color of our skin. People don't recognize that we're a minority. We can sort of pretend. But increasingly, we are becoming more open with our business acquaintances. We own a business together for 14, 15 years, and we've never been out in our business. People think of us in our business life as 2 separate individual women they don't even know to a great extent, or at least we thought. They didn't. But when we were legally married on December 27th of last year, I felt a shift. all of a sudden I felt comforted and empowered that in some states our love is actually legal, that we had the right to legally marry. Since our wedding, we have discovered that we are living in a don't ask, don't tell world. Word got around Akron that we had gotten married. Someone of our business colleagues just literally showed up at the wedding. People we had never discussed our personal lives with start congratulating us around town. So I guess it was not as hidden as we thought. But through this process, and I've spoken to many people, I've been surprised primarily about how many people in Ohio do not know that same-sex marriage is still not legal in Ohio. Educated people, professional people, they don't know that. So it really is, behooves us to share that, to make that change. Things are not perfect yet. There are still many times and many people with whom I am more comfortable not sharing our marital status, and I have the option to do that. But I have hope for the future, hope that our children's generation will help shift our country, world, offering love, acceptance, dignity, and worth for all, no matter who they are or whom they love. Thank you.
Well, unlike Katie, I didn't know what I didn't know. I grew up thinking that I would never get married, so that wasn't even part of my frame of reference. I had hoped that someday I would meet the love of my life, which I did, and I knew she would be a woman. That wonderful day did come, but it was really complicated, as Katie mentioned. We had 3 young children in a world that had not yet seen Ellen kiss a woman on TV, if you guys remember that day. Pretty dramatic. I was mostly the friend or aunt, as Katie mentioned. Pictures that included me were taken down when the kids' friends came to the house, and often I would be asked to leave. While it hurt, I understood their embarrassment. I was never legit in those early days, feeling literally invisible and marginalized. I didn't know who to blame, so I turned it on myself, feeling shame, eventually anger towards the oppressive culture. And then, when it didn't seem for all those years that anything would ever change, I accepted it, which only reinforced the shame. And as Carol mentioned, at some point I just got so angry and pissed off that even when it was legal, I still didn't really consider it for myself because I was still so angry at the system that had created such pain in my life. I had found the woman and the family that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, but it would always feel that I was just Katie's best friend or the kids' make-believe aunt to much of the outside world. If I had been a man, which I often wished I was, it would have been also perfect. We would have been married. Our family had to add yet another dimension to our lives for so many years. I told so-and-so that my kids and my family went to Ocracoke on that great vacation, and Katie would say, "You did? That means I can't tell so-and-so that I went on a vacation with my kids to Ocracoke because they know the so-and-so that you told, and then they're going to figure it out." I mean, if you can only imagine all those years where we're making all that up. And certainly it was complicated for the kids because they were telling stories too. They were lying as well. It was good for a laugh or two, but mostly it was incredibly stressful. When Katie and I walked into that courthouse in Pittsburgh to get our marriage license, everything changed. We were walking into a real courthouse and met up with an incredibly supportive woman who issued our license, where the number of same-sex couples outnumbered the number of straight couples getting their license that day. I mean, And the straight couples were smiling at us and congratulating us. When we were trying to take a selfie in front of the picture of marriage license, a wonderful woman said, "Hey, how about if I take a picture of you?" It was surreal. That day, I surely was not invisible. And together, Katie and I were respected for what we were doing. It felt like I and we were an important part of the shift in our culture that depends on straight, gay, bi, and trans people standing on the side of love. We had planned to elope, but our kids said, "No way, we're having a real wedding." Would have been a lot simpler and a lot cheaper. But our community became part of the planning and the execution of the event. Young adult UUs who grew up in this church and other churches in the district changed plans, including not going on cruises, to be with us that day. Friends pitched in to decorate, pour the champagne, make a beautiful wedding cake, play the music, clean up, and celebrate with us. We sang together during the service. Deanna was an amazing flower girl. Jason walked me down the aisle. Alicia walked Katie down the aisle. Our friend Tom Bodie married us, and another friend from this church, Lori Lerner, assisted. People invited themselves, as Katie mentioned. We had 3 different venues because it kept getting bigger. We finally married in the North Hill Church in Pittsburgh. And our kids got the pride flag to hang behind us. It was just amazing. Tom offered beautiful opening words to thank our friends and family who had traveled to another state to be with us, making a statement of their own by being there that was incredibly meaningful to us personally and to the movement to advance marriage equality. As he spoke the words very slowly and intentionally, "And now, by the power invested in me by the church and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I pronounce Katie and Sue a married couple." It was just amazing. The work is not done. When we crossed the state line back into Ohio, felt very comfortable. We were outlaws again. But it was weird crossing a state line. The momentum is moving in a loving and accepting direction. And I want to say that we thank everyone in this church, particularly those of you that are our straight allies, for putting yourselves on the line and taking leadership on your own, and to the young people of this church who have done the same, for joining, not only joining, but leading the struggle. It would not be happening without you, and we thank you from the depths of our heart. We especially embrace the young people of this congregation, and you know who you guys are, for becoming the leaders that will truly take our culture to a loving place we can't even imagine.
Thank you guys so much. Since we're a little over our time, but it's a good over our time, I just want to say a couple of quick comments. I just want to thank Katie and Sue and Carol and Linda for sharing your stories. Wow, that was powerful. Thank you so much for letting us into your lives and for being part of our community. You have blessed us so much. You're welcome. You're welcome. As I listen to you talk, I'm so sorry that you've experienced pain and exclusion and woundedness for yourselves and your families. That ain't right at all. And I know we're not there yet, but it feels like we're getting there where we need to be. It feels like we're getting there. And I'm just so in awe of your courage, your commitment. I've never had to walk in your shoes, and just, you guys are amazing. I just want to close by saying that for me, I can't wait for the first time when I get to sign a marriage license here in the state of Ohio. That will be so exciting. That will be so exciting. And as Linda and as all of them alluded to, I am so proud of this church and this faith for the role that we have played in this journey and in this struggle. I'm so glad that we have provided a spiritual home for Carol and Linda and for Katie and Sue. And I'm so proud of Unitarian Universalism because our faith really has been at the forefront of this struggle for justice and equality. I don't know if you're aware, but the first same-sex marriage that happened in Massachusetts over 10 years ago was officiated by the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. And that is something for which we should be very, very proud. The struggle's not over. Even after marriage becomes legal and equal in all 50 states, there's still work to do. Carol brought to my attention, and I've read about as well, that sort of the next step is this idea of religious exemptions, right? For institutions that are affiliated with religions that object to same-sex marriage, the effort to have exemptions so that they don't have to grant equal rights. Well, we're going to stand against that as well. And I just want to conclude by saying that in this religion and in this church community, we will never make any exceptions or exemptions when it comes to love and justice. We will continue to be the faith that stands with all people, that stands against all forms of exclusion and oppression, and that stands together on the side of love. That's what we've been doing. That's what we'll keep doing with great joy and great love.
We thank you again and encourage you to seek us out at uuakron.org.